So let's get into the details of flipping. And like I said, it's not really about flipping, but we are going to talk about flipping. So you guys are a little bit familiar with the flip and flow formula, where you talk about you buy so you're gonna buy a house, and I'm gonna like totally geek out on statistics with you guys, so that you have the back story that, you know, I didn't just randomly pick these numbers, and you know, it's in this context I'll go into more detail about it. You can get caught up with all the numbers, but I'm going to explain that to you, and then hopefully it's really easy to understand, and then you'll just go with you don't have to overanalyze it. You can just go with this formula as a starting place. So you buy a house for $50,000, you have a $50,000 rehab budget, and then you sell it for $150,000. So you're adding value by doing the rehab, you're adding value by negotiating the deal, you know, you're adding value by making it a better place for somebody to live. So your adding value is giving you that $50,000 profit here. So what's the time? I want to make sure
You're right on time. It's 9:54, so you got to hold.
Okay.
Yeah, I told you you were fine. I'm gonna go grab the handouts that go.
Okay, so we've got, you know, statistics, census data, yada yada. But I'm gonna just give you the breakdown of why I do the houses in the areas that I do them, the numbers that I've looked at, and I have it's interesting to me. So as many times as I show this, almost every time I show it, somebody comes to me and they say, you know, so if we have a budget of $100,000, they say, well, if you have to do 10 houses, if you have $1 million, they say, if I have $1 million sitting there, why would you do 10 houses instead of just doing $1 million house and then turn around and sell it for 1.5 million? So I'm going to explain that, because that is a, you know, that is a, you know, a temptation, I suppose. Or, you know, why not do 4 $250,000 houses and now you do a fraction of the work? So I'm going to explain to you exactly why this is we'll call this the sweet spot. Okay, ready? You guys take notes on this, because I'm totally geeking out now. So we're looking at, can you guys all see? I wish I was left-handed right now. I'm going to move my dream jars and my big lips. All right, I'm going to ask somebody else to move this.
I will.
So population. So the population of the U.S. is 281. Is it 2? Can you guys see my handwriting? 281. Oh my gosh, is that a 4 or a 9? This might be a 4, but I'm going to write it down as a 9. I can't tell my handwriting. I think that's a 4. I got to move over here. I can't write on that side. Yep. So population 281 million-ish.
Careful it doesn't bleed your ball.
Oh, thank you.
Because you're going to write there.
I am not going to write there. Everybody sees? Okay? Okay, so thank you. So population 281 million. I think that is the 421,906. So when I want to look at it, all the data I'm showing you came from Info Please.
And also
And census data. So
census.gov.
We did a little bit of cross-verifying to make sure that the numbers actually made sense. So we're going to look at the breakdown of the population. We're going to look at the breakdown of houses, renters versus owner-occupied houses, and you're going to see how this all comes together to show you why our sweet spot is our sweet spot. So occupied houses. There are 91% of the houses in the United States are occupied. 6% are vacant. Put vacant over here. I feel my brain and writing are not always in sync with each other. So, and of that 6%, 3% are actually vacation. Oh no, I did that. Okay. 9%. So 91% are occupied. 9%. I'm starting over so you can follow easier. Occupied.
Good pencils.
is 91%.
White.
Yeah, I know, right? Sorry. That's why you have an entire notebook. There's notebooks in there. Oh, in the boxes, there's notebooks for you guys who don't have. Yeah, in each box there's an extra
You
notebook.
each should have a notebook. So,
Sorry, memorized.
So vacant, occupied is 91% of the homes in the United States have somebody living in them. 9% are vacant, and of those 9%, 3% are vacation. So for us, our world of flipping houses, our inventory is roughly the 6%. So these are the houses that they may or may not be foreclosed. There's huge, huge shadow inventory. So that means that the banks are sitting on hundreds of thousands of houses that they're not releasing. And I work directly with, and you talked with Greg over at the bank. So they have inventory. So if you establish a relationship with the bank, then they can let you know and you can buy the inventory straight from the bank. So a lot of realtors don't want to work with really low-end houses, so what they do is they cluster them together, and then they'll sell 100 houses to investors like us. So there's a lot of stuff other than what you see on the MLS. There's a whole lot more going on in the world of real estate. So this is our number that we care about. Not earth-shattering, but it's an interesting number to know. Now let's look at so we have two sides of our business. We have the flipping business and we have the rental business. And all of this information is going to help on both sides. So now, curious piece of information number one. Now we have owned homes. Now this doesn't necessarily mean owner-occupied homes. So owned homes that, they're houses that you're living in it as opposed to a rental property. So owned homes is 66%, and our rentals are 33%. So when I look at why would I want to be just in this business of selling to people who are owner occupied? I want to be in both sides of it. So what's that?
So you would be missing a third of the market.
Right, exactly. And what happens is there's fluctuations. And so if this number goes up or down, I want to be capturing, and it's not going to be 100%. So if you have the owned homes and the rental homes, you can flip and you can fluctuate back and forth. It's another reason why I like the houses that I like, and again, you're going to see all the demographics, because they're easy to transition to a rental. So let's take the $10,000 or 10,000 square foot castle. They're renting it for $3,100. It's a $3 million house. They're losing money. They just want, while they're sitting on it, they just want somebody to be living there and make sure that it's not being vandalized. They want the utilities paid. I'm happy to pay the utilities and pay $3,100 a month. It's ridiculous. But that's one of the reasons why I don't want to do the $1 million houses. So another curious information, we want to capture the whole market. You can squat, right? You guys don't mind if I'm squatting. So now let's look at the number of units in a home. And this is why I talk to so many real estate investors, and there's not a right or wrong. Everybody's got their own strategies and their own philosophy for why they're doing something. For me, I love the single family homes. There's a lot of investors I talk to, they're like, no, it's too much headache, it's too much hassle, you've got too many roofs to replace. It's nice to have a 10 unit because you've got one roof to replace. But I'm going to show you why I like to have at least a portion of what we have in here. So, number of units, single family homes. The percent of the population is 60.3% are in single family homes. This is 70 million units. I was going to draw a chart, but it's not so pretty, I don't think. We're going to put this together in a chart and we'll give it to you guys. We'll probably we're going to give you guys a flash drive on Sunday, and it's got a whole ton. We printed off our stack of information we're going to give you is literally this tall.
Ream of paper.
It's almost a whole ream of paper. So we printed off 2 of them, and then our printer started smoking, and then we started lamenting about killing trees. And so So we have 2 hard copies if anybody's like really into hard, and we'll print, if you guys want a hard copy, we can print it. But we got flash drives for everybody to be able to share the information. So 60.3% are single family homes. I like the majority. You know, I want to do my business where it's the majority of what's out there. So condos and townhouses. This is 5.6% or 6.4 million. 2 flats are 4.3%, 5 million. 3 to 19 units, 13.4%, 15 million. 20 plus units, 8.6%, it's 10 million. And then mobile homes, this was interesting, 7.6%, 9 million. Now, I am a fan of owning it all. You know, I want to capture 100% of it. But when I look at the breakdown of what is out there, I love mobile homes. Mobile homes can give you a good return. But I'm focusing right now on where the majority is. You know, you're always going to be able to find more buyers. You're always going to be able to sell and buy and rent more in this demographic here. So, all curious information. So next, we're going to look at the value of the homes. Now this answers the question about why not do $1 million house or a $250,000 house. For me, you know, there's people who do it. I have a girlfriend, she only flips multi-million-dollar homes. And she does really well with it, when she does really well with it. She's sitting on a house right now, she bought it dirt cheap and she's got a lot of money that she can work with, so it's not a big deal. But she got it listed for $5 million. She's doing the same thing that I'm looking at the house to rent it short term. $5 million house. It's got a 42-person theater, like to give you an idea of what type of house it is. It's on 8 acres. You can't sell it for the life of her. I mean, if you're going to spend $5 million on a house, you want exactly the house that you want. So it's a little bit older. You know, she fixed it up, but it's not. You know, it's not a no-brainer for somebody at $5 million. So now she's got multiple exit strategies. Right now she's just sitting on it and she's renting it, and the vacation rentals are covering, I don't think she has a mortgage on it, but they're covering the expenses. But I look at how many houses could I have flipped in the, was it 3 to 5 years, something. She's been sitting on it for years. Every time I see her, I'm like, "Did you sell that thing yet?" I'm like, "Okay, well that's okay. We're gonna come and have a girls' weekend there." So not the worst thing. But she's now looking at a plan of the property, it's in New York, of the property, split it off so that she's going to have condos, and she's actually going to use the main house as like the clubhouse. So, you know, she's having to go a totally different, again, she was smart. She's got multiple exit strategies. If she didn't have the land, she wouldn't have this option. So when you go into a deal, you want to have multiple exit strategies. So value of homes, why I love what I love. So, $50,000 to $100,000, 30.4%. So 30.4% of the homes are in that price range. $100,000 to $150,000, 23.7%. $150,000 to $200,000, 14.6%. So this, just these, 67.7%. Again, this for me is the sweet spot because it's where the majority are. And if you look at houses, less than 10% of the homes are over $300,000. So I don't want to work in this world. You know, I'm not as interested in the odds. You know, there are so many, and we're all probably in this category or, you know, close to that category. But the majority of people are going to be up here. So this, again, this is why this is my sweet spot. So I'll buy a house for, I don't ever like to list a house over $200,000. And it's not like I went and ran the numbers and did my research on the statistics. I did it through trial and error, and I found out that it's just harder to sell a lot of houses over $200,000. So I can get in, I can get out, I can sell it fast. You know, I don't have to sit on something to market. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but you know, again, for me, I want to be smart about what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll wait till you finish.
No, go ahead.
Well, these are statistics are nationwide, correct? So do you have the ones for the surrounding counties like Canada, Page?
So we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's it. Yes, I'm gonna show you guys exactly for our city here and where you guys can find that information for anywhere.
Actually, and there's going to be on your flash drive, you will have specific information for the greater Chicago area because that's one of the demographics in the census house.
So this is huge for us to, you know, when you're looking at houses, how sustainable is a business? For us, how sustainable is our flipping business? Like my girlfriend, if she's only focusing on multi-million-dollar houses. Granted, you might only need to do one or two, but I don't know how many people have gotten into this business. Like, hey, I'm gonna get, you know, syndication. I'm gonna get money investors. I'm gonna buy $1 million house, and they lose everything, and all the people lose their money. And it's, you know, to me, it's just not smart. You know, it's not smart if you can be a little bit more conservative and still have more consistent flow of money. So now let's talk about rentals. This was just like we're all such princesses here. You guys are. I mean, we really don't understand and appreciate sometimes, I think, how most people live and how exciting it is for somebody to buy their first $50,000 house, or you know, $100,000 house is like a dream home for most people. So it's a really cool place for us too. Just the, you know, the energy of, if I'm working with somebody who's buying $1 million house, they're probably gonna be a little bit of a pain in the ass. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
It's another $1 million house.
It's right? Like, oh, you know, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this, and how dare you do this, and da da da. I'd probably be that way. I mean, if I was gonna spend $1 million on a house, I think it's silly. We were just having this conversation. Rent your luxuries, invest in your assets. Even if it's your own house. You know, I'm gonna share with you guys. So there's a room off the side there. So we travel, you know, we're here a fraction of the time. Did you go in there?
No.
Oh.
Is that where the bodies are?
That's where the bodies are. That's where the $1 million who pissed me off. No, we've had this, it was just a storage room. It was our meditation room, and I never came down and meditated there. So we turned it into a bedroom. And we had some friends come stay with us, and I was like, you know what? We could rent out that room. So this house, we don't pay, we own the house free and clear. We bought it as a foreclosure, fixed it up, it was totally gutted, fixed it up, paid for everything with cash. So our only expense of this house is to pay the taxes and utilities. So as I'm like talking about teaching this, I'm like, well, no, we're not really practicing what we're preaching with this particular house. Granted, we have other houses that pay for it, but I like the idea of having no liabilities, and this was our only liability. So I'm like, we can rent out the basement room. My husband's like, have you lost your mind? Like, this is our home. And there was another one where I was like, hey, somebody's moving in the basement. It was just like the 10,000 square foot house. He's like, oh, okay. Well, he's so
it wasn't really that far-fetched, actually, because, you know, by that time, I mean, we were not spending as much time there anyway.
Yeah.
My biggest concern was having a stranger in the house with the kids.
Yeah.
So our kids, you know, we have kids that are 8 and 10 and a 19-year-old, but that was my biggest
Yeah,
concern.
mine too. I mean, you know, I'm like, well, they're not babysitting. You know, they're not going to be alone in the house with them.
But it is amazing when you throw that energy out there.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, people are so great.
Most
I mean,
amazing.
and it's one of the,
So,
it's just on a side note, just the whole things that we see on Facebook and YouTube. Like we were talking about this earlier too. And I've been talking about my friends, but just some of the things that we see on Facebook now. You get online and they play the video automatically. You know, I'm big into martial arts, so every time I see these videos at gas stations with people getting attacked, and it's like it's crazy the stuff that's out there. But I think a lot of that stuff colors our view of people.
right.
And so there's like a distrust, I think, that we have because we see this stuff, even though it's a microcosm of what's actually happening out there. But there's people out there that, you know, like yeah, you told the story about renting the room, so it's pretty cool.
I listed it, and I mean it's just a little room, and it's not like they have the whole house. I listed it for $650. I'm like, well, if I could, I'm not gonna rent it for $300 because I don't know what kind of crackhead's gonna move in. So I listed it for $650, and you can't be, and Linda and you guys, real estate folks, you guys can you can't discriminate in any way, because I'm like, well, I want this and I don't want this and I want da da da. So I listed it as Christian family has extra room for rent, non-smoking, female. I think you like for renting a room you can specify female. So I basically like narrowed it down to it's probably not a serial killer. And we had only 2 people actually called us. And the first one was the sweetest woman in the world. She was so nice. And she was divorced and was living with her son. She's like, I think I'm going to start to venture out on my own. Lived in Barrington. I mean, not like living in an apartment. She was living in like a $1 million house in a room there. She's like, I just think I need to, I'm not ready to get my own place, but I want to not be so close to my own family. Ended up, her son never let her move out. But she goes to Willow Creek, so we see her at church. Like, it's just, and from Craigslist. Was not even listed at a church. And so that was the first one. We're like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't meant to be. And then we got a call from a company. They do short-term occupational therapy work. They said, we've got a woman who is going to be here for 3 months. I was like, it's kind of perfect because then we're not married to the person. So she comes, she's here Monday through Friday. She leaves on Friday, goes home to her normal house for the weekend, comes back Monday morning, and she pays $650 a month. It's like such a no-brainer to me. But it's a slightly different mindset. It's where can we be smarter about our money? How did I get another tangent? Because I got to account for the tangents and the time.
But back to the
So
rental.
back to the rentals.
To the flow piece.
Flow. So when we look at where the majority of renters are, this was interesting to me because my little room in the back is renting for $650. What most renters are actually paying. So in the $300 to $500 per month range, that's 22% of the renters. $500 to $750 represents 33.7% of the renters, and $750 to $999 represents 17.2% of the renters. So here we're covering, oh gosh, my handwriting, it's good.
Yeah.
72.9%. I'm reading my writing and my numbers. I'm like, is that an 8? Is that a... So again, we're capturing the majority of the market. So I had this conversation with my dad. He has a couple of townhouses, way nicer than most of what I have. And he gets, I don't know, maybe $1,400 or $1,500 in rent. And I assure you, he has less headaches than I do. But for his unit, which has fewer people that are going to be wanting to rent it, for his, I could buy 2 or 3 in this range. So, again, I'm always weighing, and I have some nice townhouses. I've got, I try to cover a variety of things, but if you're looking at where's the sweet spot, where's my most likely to get a good solid return without too much speculation, this is a good range. So I've got a bunch of rentals in Rockford, Illinois, in Beloit, Wisconsin, that are, it's in between these two. They're right around the $500 mark. But I can pick up those houses for $25,000. And we do have a house in Elgin, on the east side of Elgin, that it's renting for $1,100. So it's just on the tip of this. But when we have houses that are $1,500 or $1,800, it's very difficult to find somebody, because those are people that there's probably something a little bit not right, otherwise they'd be owning their own house.
Right.
So these people will probably never own their own house. I mean, it's just the reality. So if you can provide a nice, solid rental for them, you can keep them happy, you can have a nice, clean place, a little bit nicer than what anything else is out there, then you can keep these, and they're good, solid cash flowing properties. So again, when you're looking at what's your sweet spot, what is it that you're going to do? So these are our flow properties. So we're going to take our $50,000 in to buy the house, $50,000 in rehab, and then we're going to sell it for $150,000. Even after taxes and accounting for stuff going wrong, you're going to end up with $25,000 or $30,000. Then you can pick up one of these. Every time you flip, you add this as and you could. It's residual income if you bought it and then fixed it up, but it's pure passive income. You rent or you hire a property management company. Our property manager's coming tomorrow to talk to you guys, and he does everything. I literally, sometimes I'll buy houses I don't even walk into because I don't need to. The property manager knows how much it's going to rent for. He goes in and he tells me all the deferred maintenance or whatever needs to get done that hasn't been done on it. you know, it's kind of turnkey. So it's so important that we know where the sweet spots are, have the relationships built, know who the good property managers are, because we've had some bad ones too. So is this helpful to kind of narrow down? It can be so overwhelming. Like, let me go buy a house. Well, you could really do poorly in the business if you don't understand a lot of the details like this. What other statistics? Do you guys like all statistics now? Do you guys need a break? Do you think you need like coffee or anything? If my husband, honey, would you like some coffee?
That means she wants coffee. That translates.
Took us a long time to learn that. I actually don't like it, but
Okay.
Is that the over 18 population?
oh, I don't know.
I think it has to be.
It might be.
Yeah, because I think right now we're floating
On the
320.
Look at
and
the
you know what?
census.
And the census data has it by age range as well. There's like you
Yeah.
guys
That would
have
make
the
sense.
entire.
When we were looking
all
at
of
that,
the
that would be the relevant number for us. Yeah.
And I'm gonna pop up the key percentages.
You can pop up whatever you want. Okay. Couple more geeky statistics things, then we're gonna dig into how all of these relate to us finding our houses that we're actually gonna be working on. So number of rooms in a house, this was interesting as well. So and these are not just bedrooms, this is total rooms in the house. So, you know what, again, it blows my mind because we're so spoiled. And we're like, oh, I can't live my kids all need their own bedroom and we need an office and a library and whatever. Although after we spent some time in Peru, when me, my 2 kids, 2 other teenagers, and then later on 2 more girls from the Netherlands came, and we all lived in a 3-bedroom condo. So I'm like, I could live in a shoebox now, very happily. So four rooms in the house was 16%. 5 rooms was 20.9%. 6 rooms is 18.5%. 7 rooms is 12.1%. So again, this is the 67.5%. So this is kind of the sweet spot. Now let me break down what this looks like. And most of them are not this. Most of mine are, well, mine are the 5 or 6. So this is where, and this is actually, let me ask anybody if I'm doing my math wrong, but, so this for me is the sweet spot of doing the houses. So I look at this, okay, 5 to 6 rooms in the house. Now I'm gonna look at single family homes. Now I'm gonna look at what could it rent for. Now I'm gonna look at what's the value of the house. So this is relevant for the rentals and for the flipping houses. And then I look at the values and the rentals, you know, depending on which I'm looking for. So now the breakdown of what this probably looks like. So if you've got a 4-room house, it's probably 2 beds, a kitchen, and a living room. If you've got 5, it's probably 3 beds, kitchen, and a living room. If you've got 6, it's probably a good dining room, 3 beds, kitchen, living, dining. And then if you've got the 7, now, you know, it could be like 3-bed with an office or something like that, but we'll call it 4 beds, then the kitchen, living, and dining. So when we look at houses, we start with a 3-bed. I'm going to just put that all down here. So taking all of this into consideration, we have what is our ideal home. Is that what we buy most of the time? No, but that's our starting point, and that's in our perfect world. So we say we would, and my ideal house and my search criteria are going to be a little bit different. So I'll talk about my ideal house would be 3-bed, 2-bath, you know, maybe 1.5 bath is okay depending on the neighborhood, but 3-bed, 2-bath, about 1,500 square feet for me, and I would encourage you guys within 10 miles of your house or 20 miles if you can. We go to certain areas and that's just not possible, so sometimes we'll expand the area, sometimes we'll change our demographic because now you're getting into some more specific, what is it for this county, what is it for this city, what is it for this zip code, and I'm going to go into that too in a minute. So now we're gonna start with that, under $100,000. So that's my first criteria, and I'd love it to be under $50,000, but the listing price is not what I'm gonna be paying for it most of the time. Sometimes I pay more, sometimes I pay less. Almost never do I pay listing price. So now let's talk about the search. So if you're looking on the MLS or even looking in Zillow, I encourage everybody work with the realtor. We have 2 realtors in the room here. So find somebody who you can work with, who can do this for you. Sometimes I kind of geek out. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like sit on realtor over a bottle of wine, and it's fun for me. But the reality is, you do that too.
No. But I was just going to say that everyone can look at Zillow or Realtor.com and things like that. But not only that, but you need the realtor to actually show you the house.
Right.
You can't get in the house by yourself.
Right.
You have to have a realtor to do
So why, knowing that, if you're buying a house on the MLS, why would you do the work when they could do the work easier, get you better information? I know Ken Sun's Properties. You found he found a really sweet little niche area. What was the name of that city?
Poplar Grove.
Poplar Grove. So, you went in, I have my little niche area already. When you're starting off, you're gonna do a bunch of research, and then we talk back and forth about, what made that a good area. So we'll go into this a little bit. So when you look for the search criteria, you're gonna put in whatever criteria, and we'll go into that, but we're gonna put in whatever criteria you want. Now, you also have to look at what's the activity in the area. So you might find a perfect house that could, and I'll use the example of, we bought some houses in Spring Grove. It seemed like a great area. The average house was like $300,000. We got a house through a wholesaler. There's also a wholesaler coming tomorrow to talk to you guys. We bought a house through the wholesaler for $25,000. I'm like, I don't even care. It's got to make money, right? I mean, $25,000 house in a $300,000 or $400,000 city. Well, guess what? There's a little pocket of that city that I wasn't familiar with. That's where my house is. That has well and septic. That is zoned funny. I mean, we sold the house. We made a little bit of money, but it was most definitely not. And it was so far away that I hated going there. My contractors hated going there. Because I did exactly what I'm telling you guys not to do. I went outside of my little niche area, and it seemed like such a great thing, but somebody else would have scooped it up probably. So I got a little bit, we make mistakes. We make mistakes and we learn. I did the same thing in Joliet. It's an hour and a half, 2-hour drive sometimes from here. Same scenario. I bought it through a wholesaler, same price even, $25,000, but this time it was a 2-flat. So, and it had the potential to be this really incredible deal. We had total into it $65,000. The 2 units were done. We're just getting the floor. You guys, some of you have heard the story. Just getting the floors finished, and it was going to rent. The top was going to be. They were each about $750. So in our whatever we said, in the range of what is an easy to rent, and we had a squatter and the house burnt down. So I wasn't there. It was not a great neighborhood, but because it wasn't close, I wasn't checking in on it every day. So we might go for a few days without. So it was easy to see that there wasn't going to be somebody there.
Here's a funny aside too. The people that were at the Harvest Wrestling, it actually happened the day before Christmas Eve. And we were at a wrestling tournament, and I think it was Buffalo Grove. I don't know if you guys were there at the time. But it was strangest call you get in the morning, and then
it was like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And the city of, I see on my phone, so I'm like so excited. He's gone with Nathan. I'm thinking I can sleep in. I don't have anybody to worry. Braden was at my dad's house. And I was like, City of Joliet. And I was kind of confused. I was like, it's got to be, it's got to be a weekday. I mean, I just totally threw off what was going on in my mind. I'm like, hello? And I answered only because it said the City of Joliet. And it was the first house and last house that we did in Joliet. And we did everything on the up and up. We had a permit conversation yesterday on the call, and we pulled every permit for everything. I went to the city, because you don't want to, going new into a city, you need the city on your side. You want to make friends with the inspectors, you want to make friends with the code enforcement people. So we had done all of that, and I'm thinking, I know I didn't mess this one up. Like, why are they calling me? And so he said, are you Margaret Kim? And I see that you're the owner of this house. I'm still trying to figure out what he's getting at. And he said, well, I'm the inspector is what he said. And I'm thinking, the inspector, why is he working on a Sunday morning, the day before Christmas Eve? I was like, nothing makes sense right now. Like, I'm so confused. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yes. And he said, well, I was called to look at your house because they thought it was not structurally sound. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with you people? Like, it's 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. I know you guys don't work that hard. And I'm still just wrapping in my head, trying to wrap my brain around what was going on. He says, well, there was a fire at your house. And then I'm thinking, did he say investigator? And I'm like, no, he said inspector. And so, long story short, somebody had squatted in our basement. It was an outside cellar access, so he could have been there for weeks, for all we know. Because again, we weren't there all the time. Here, I like to drive around and look at our houses that we've got every couple of days, just to see, mostly for my own sake. But so he was in there. We're not exactly sure who or how, but the fire started, and the entire house. He said the entire first floor was gone. The second floor, the supporting beam was cracked in half, burnt through in half. And so I called Jeff, and I was like, I said, I'm going to Joliet. There was a fire at our house. Please tell me that we have insurance. And he didn't answer because he's at this wrestling tournament. And I was like, I just thought, please, as long as we have the $65,000 to cover what we put into it. And I thought this is the biggest mistake we've ever made. And I don't know why I assumed insurance wouldn't pay out. Like they would somehow weasel out of it. And I found out from Jeff later in the day, we had just switched our insurance company 2 weeks before that. Brand new insurance company, and it gets better. We had not paid our premium yet because they hadn't sent us the invoice. So I was like frantic and these poor contractors we were working with. So we drive. So then my next calls to my dad. I was like, Pops, you're coming for a ride. He's like, what? I got your kid. I was like, no, my house burnt down in Joliet, and I need you to come with me. He's like, what? And then I ate the whole ride. Told you not to go to Joliet. Told you not to go to Joliet. Told you not to go to Joliet. This is the murder capital. It's the armpit of the Midwest. Told you not to go to Joliet. So, I mean, what do you say? Yeah, right. Yeah, so we get there, and I call my contractor. He's freaking out, because insurance, for him, it could be a liability on him too. He calls the electrician, who had just put 2 full brand new electrical services in both units, rewired everything. It was like so painful. So it was like a caravan. We all drove separately coming from Elgin to Joliet, and we all must have laughed like instantaneously because we all pulled in within 30 seconds of each other. So we pulled up, and we're just standing there, and it's winter, cold, like we're still in pajamas, some of us, and there's this bulldozer. I'll show you guys a video after, maybe tomorrow. And the whole thing within like 20 minutes just took up sticks. It was crazy. It was so crazy. Moral of the story, get good insurance and know your neighborhood. Don't leave your houses too far away. Don't leave them vacant. Good times. Oh, I gotta tell you, it had a happy ending. So we called the insurance company, talked to them back and forth, made sure we paid the premium, which was like $5,000 or something, because it was on all of our homes that we had switched over. And so he's like, well, are you intending to rebuild it? I'm like, I'm not rebuilding it. I said, there's no way you can't possibly justify it. And I just kept saying, please tell me we have enough coverage to at least get our money back that we put into it. And he says, well, you have replacement value on it. It's like, well, I don't know they decide. They're the ones, we don't tell them how much replacement value is, so they're the ones who decided. So they said, you'll probably be 30 days before you get the check. I'm thinking, okay, I can live with that. And they told us that replacement value was $210,000. No. So we walked in, Jeff and I, we talked about it before. We're like, they're going to play us, like they're going to try to not pay, or I don't even know what. Because it was the first and only claim we've ever had. And so we get in there and we said, as long as we get our $65,000, then we really should not be greedy and just take it and run and chalk it up as our own mistake. And then we said, but we did have a lot of time and effort, and there's a little bit more that we have to pay. We had to pay $12,000 to bulldoze. Like by the time I got there, I had a bill for $12,000. I walked away that morning with a bill for $12,000 from the demolition company. Then you have to fill it in. So you can't just leave it. It's a hazard. So then the city was fining us, and so there was other expenses to it. So we said if we get $100,000, and we'll just, that'll be a fine return in our world and not a headache. And we still would have to get rid of the property. which isn't really going to be worth anything. So we walked in, and they, they're so sneaky and like made me nervous. And we sit down at this big long table, and Jeff and I are sitting there, and they take and they slide a check over to us. Don't even say anything. And I look at it, and it was $152,000, and I was like, okay, I gotta play it cool. Like, I want to take it and run. And I said, oh, I thought it was $210,000. And Jeff looks at me like, and he said, well, we can still give you the rest of it. And actually, I'll show you the letter. We just got certified mail. This was 2 years ago. So certified mail yesterday, we got a letter asking if we still intended to rebuild. So they said, if you rebuild, then we'll give you the rest of the money, up to the $210,000. And so I said, well, we're not going to rebuild there. And I was trying to be creative with them. And I said, what if we rebuild on another location? Or if we rehab another house? I said, because really it was a rehab. I said, if we could find a house in rehab, they said, let me find out. It was a lot of back and forth. They said yes. So we haven't done it yet because we would have to put $210,000 into it, which is not in my sweet spot. So I'm open to it still. So we aren't actively looking for it, but if we find one, and they did say that we could do up to 4 units. So I kind of forgot about it, really. We donated the property to a charity, and they were able to sell it to somebody for like $10,000. So there's a lot of good came out of this not so good story. But I really hadn't thought about it for at least a year.
We're going to talk about insurance tomorrow. So
Yeah.
that is the first line of protection for you guys when you are looking at this investment.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about it tomorrow.
Yeah, so yes, that's another tangent. That was not in the schedule, and I might get yelled at, but searching, we are looking for, so we'll start with the 3-bed, 2-bath, right now, 3-bed, 2-bath, and when I'm searching, there's almost no two houses are going to be the same. So I searched for 1,000 square foot because you don't know if they've got a basement you could turn into some extra living space. You don't know if there's like a huge closet that you could actually turn into something else. So as a starting point, I'll look there. And then I say less than 10 miles from my house because of the Joliet issue and the Spring Grove issue. And then less than $100,000. I don't intend to spend $100,000. Now, when we go look at some houses later, 2 or 3 of the houses I've actually looked at before and they've dropped the price. So here's what happens. The good deals will be gone and you'll have a feeding frenzy and multiple offers from homeowners and investors. More often than not, they're overpriced. The realtors have them overpriced, the banks have them overpriced. So I search for under $100,000. I don't intend to spend $100,000. I've never spent $100,000. Have I ever spent $100,000 on a house? Not on a flip. Under, what's the highest one? Vincent? 80? Something like 80.
Yeah, that's we had one in Warwick too that was.
So always, we've always spent under $100,000, but that doesn't mean that they were listed at under $100,000. So it's totally normal for me to go in and offer half price on a house. So you've got some houses that they're going to put it out there at a really cheap price, like Worth. So the house that you guys know on Worth, they listed at $31,000. That's why there's 20 offers. Everybody was looking at it. The houses that we're looking at today, some of them are sort of sleeper houses. And 2 of them I've made offers on previously that we didn't even get a response on. So they're houses that I would do, but they were stupid. They were asking too much money for it, and now nobody's bought them. So one of them, I know that they just dropped the price $10,000. And I'm curious, I gotta go look at my paperwork, but I'm curious how much I offered them. Because it's happened more than once that I've seen them drop the price to less than what we'd offered them. But there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of reasons why sometimes the bank, talking to the bankers too is an interesting thing because they have numbers that they have to hit. And they need to get them off their books, sometimes quicker than other banks. So it's not a hard and fast rule working with the banks, working with an REO property. It depends on the bank that you're working in. We don't need to get into that. We don't need to know about all that. It's curious and it's interesting. But you might have one bank that they're okay holding these assets. This is also why a lot of banks don't foreclose. Because if they don't actually foreclose on it, it's going to show differently on their records. So if you take a banker out to lunch and ask them all kinds of questions, and I don't even want to know. Like there's so many weird things going on with banks. And sometimes they need it for accounting purposes, they need them off their books. So they'll sell it for a loss. Any foreclosure is going to be for a loss. It costs a bank on average $60,000 to go through the foreclosure process. So if they're selling a house for $30,000, it's cost them $60,000. It's insane. So that's why banks are holding, one of the reasons why banks are holding shadow inventory. Because there's what their records look like, and then there's the actual cash of what's going on. So for the banks, it's cheaper and easier for them to sit on a property and not foreclose on it and not do anything with it. And then they can cluster them, and then they can pass them off in a different way. So we're working with REO properties that the banks have listed, and it's the point of it is there's no logic to how much they're really going to sell it for. They've all got their rules, they've all got their motivation for why they're getting it off their books. So this 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,000 square foot, less than 10 miles, less than $100,000. This is not always going to give you the best results. So sometimes we need to tweak it. So let's have a discussion about it. So if we do this search and we don't find anything, knowing a little bit about what you guys know. So I want to make sure that you guys I'm not just going to regurgitate to you, that you guys learn how to fish a little bit. So you guys have some information on the demographics. So if this is a starting point, why is it a starting point? Because we like 3-bed, because there's a big chunk of them there. There's another statistic I was going to share with you. I'll share with you some specific to Elgin ones, but this could be anywhere, with how many people per house. So if you're in an area and you see the average per home is very close to 2, then you probably would be more in this range.
Right.
And probably a higher price point too. So you could be in an area where maybe not like $300,000 higher price point, but a 2-bed with a kitchen and a living room at $150,000 is very different than a 4-bed kitchen, living room, dining room at that same price range. So they both work. But if you've got a family with kids, which is the Elgin demographic, based on you can see how many people per house, then you probably want 3 beds. So if you've got on average in that area 2.89 people per house, then you probably want to have more people. So let's pretend like you guys are talking to your realtor, or this is what you do. So for any of the realtors, you guys know this, and for you guys, the realtor will set up a search for you. I don't actively do anything. So literally when I called my realtor, I said, hey, I want you to take us out and look at houses on Saturday. Just run the normal numbers. It's a 20-second conversation, or more often it's just a text message now. So I don't have to do any of this after I set it up once, unless it starts not working. If I go out there and I say, hey, run my search criteria, and there's nothing, then we tweak it. So let's talk about how would you guys tweak it if this came back with none? What of these criteria could you change? Bathrooms. So yep. So, and that's a perfect one. So you could do a 1.5 is essentially the same as a 2-bath. And a lot of times you're not going to know until you go into it. So even if it's a 1-bath, like the house on Liberty, perfect example. It's a huge house, 4 or 5 bedrooms, whatever, 4 bedrooms, and it only has 1 bathroom. But there's plenty of space. So we have it over 1,000 square foot. The house is like 2,500 square foot. But it only had 1 bathroom, so that was exactly the search criteria that we had to change to find that one. And it's pretty relatively easy to put in an extra bathroom, or at least a half bath, so that you can call it 1.5. What else? What else to get more things in that would not?
Radius,
What was that?
the radius, maybe expand out to 15
Yep.
miles.
So then I'll change it to more than 20 miles. Yeah, that's one that when you do that, again, just want to know what's the demographic. When you guys decide the area that you want to focus on, this is going to be really important. So was it Poplar? I can't remember. Poplar Grove. So the area is in the more than 20-mile radius, but it could be a little sweet spot. So if you have more than 1 house, my mistake in going out to Spring Grove was when I went out there, I only had 1 house. I did end up picking up a 2nd house, equally painful. and decided I'm not gonna go there again. But the Joliet one, it was my only house. I sent out a painter, he only had one house to do, and I don't wanna go find a brand new contractor, because I know I've got everything going on here. But when you find it, maybe you do go 20 or even 30 miles out to find your sweet spot. So yeah, that's good. What else?
Square footage.
Yeah.
Just drop it. Just drop it altogether.
Yeah. And that's, and if we put these in order of priority, I would say the bath would be number one. The bedrooms, I can switch it to a 2-bed at 1,500 square foot. Because I can squeeze another bedroom in. Again, we have to go there and look at the layout of everything, but this, I could turn a 2-bed into that. So I look at things like if I'm looking at a 2-bed, how could I make it a 3-bed? Or if I'm looking at a 1-bath, how could I make it a 2-bath?
We've looked at a lot of homes in the last while. There seems to be an abundance of realtors who don't understand what a bathroom is.
It's true.
Basement bathrooms in particular.
Yeah, and
Basement bathrooms that are nowhere near code, but they're calling it a bathroom.
I cannot tell you how many times we've laughed, Matt, my contractor, and I. We're like, are you kidding? Every flipping house has this throne in the base. It's just a toilet smack in the middle of the basement, and they call it a bathroom. Yeah.
The ceilings are 5 feet 11
Right,
inches.
right.
You're like,
I know what. Maybe when indoor plumbing was new, like such a novelty
But
that
they're
they
not
just
even
put them
allowed to
anywhere.
call that
Remember-
a bathroom.
Yeah, they're not.
Remember the urinal in that one? There was a urinal.
They just took that. Literally, they just took that out
Oh,
yesterday.
did it?
We had a rental property with a urinal in the basement.
Turn it down in a dark, dirty, mushroom growing basement.
Okay, so what else would you guys? What else could you do or think about?
Oh, you could go to 120 on
Yeah,
the price side
yeah.
and look for stuff that's been on the market for more than 30 days.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, days on market, would you comment on that as a trigger?
That's perfect. So both of those in conjunction. So if I look at a house, I will actually pull a separate search on the market time.
Okay.
So I don't care if something has been on the market for 400 days and they've never seen an offer, which is entirely possible. That was the case with this house. That's how we got this house. It was the only house I looked at, and I looked at the market time. It was on there. It was crazy how long it was on the market, and I'm like, well, you don't know the bank situation, but you have a house that's listed for $150,000 that's been on the market for 6 months. It's not crazy to think you could get that for $70,000 because you don't know. Like, you don't know until you make the offer.
Is there a way on market time to get cumulative market time? Or because sometimes they restart
take it off and put it
that
back on.
clock and-
Deactivate.
Yeah.
Take it off and put it back on.
That's it. Is there a way to get a cumulative? I don't think so. I mean, for our purposes, when we're searching, not
You can look at
really.
history.
Yeah, if you look down, you got to dig down to see it.
History.
Yeah, but not as a search criteria. But it's not like you're gonna have 100 houses to look at in this. And the more you look at it, when you know your market, the more you work with it, you're gonna know. I mean, if it's been on the market, you're not gonna check it every week even. You might check it once a month for the long market time. Because you know exactly what's buying and selling.
There is another thing, you can look, there are expired listings
Yeah.
and canceled listings.
Yes.
Which usually the expired means, you sign a contract for a year usually.
With the realtor.
And that year is up and it's expired, and so maybe they're gonna take it off the market for a while and then put it back on, so, and that's another thing that you could look at.
Yeah. And this is kind of not the best use of time, because for me, I just want to get in and get a house. If I have to spend 6 weeks looking for a house to get $5,000 more profit, I would have been better off just buying a house and making $20,000 instead of $30,000 or $40,000. So for me, it's when I go out and look for a house, it's because I'm going to get a house under contract. Because it's the time in my business to buy another house. So I will keep tweaking the search criteria until I find houses that I can make offers on. And if you've only got 5 houses to look at, get it to 10 houses. Doing any of these things, and you guys, when you play around with it, you can tweak it a little bit more. I've even looked at 1-bedroom houses. Here's the crazy thing. What was the house? There was a house that was listed as a 1-bedroom, and we're like, this doesn't make any sense. You can't count it as a bedroom. Again, if They're having a good realtor who doesn't count the toilet in the basement as a bathroom, but also you've got a house. Which house was it? I can't remember if it was one that we bought or not. There's a house that was listed as a 1-bedroom, but the square foot was huge. So if I'm increasing the square foot, so let's say I say 1,500 square foot, I actually don't care, 0 plus bedrooms. Because if it's 1,500 square foot, maybe I can knock out a wall or add a wall or do something. So there was a house that we looked at that was gorgeous, and I guarantee you that other investors, our fellow investors, were not looking at it because it showed 1 bedroom. It actually had 3 or 4 bedrooms, but they didn't have a closet. So, that technically you can't count that as a bedroom. You think I can't put a closet in for $100? So it's a little bit of the stealth ninja stuff that what's happening, there's a lot of hedge funds that are picking up bunches of houses. They're doing, search criteria, they're not digging down deep. That's where we have the benefit of digging down deep and finding things that are maybe not everybody else would be able to find. Most houses that we get that are the best deals are exactly that.
Do you search for houses with the auctions?
I bought 3 houses with auction. I don't like the energy of the auction. Like, it's such a frantic and like people are there working for a hedge fund. So here's the demographic of people. It's people like us. It's people who are working for a hedge fund that have $9 million and they've got to go out and buy houses because their commission is based on how many houses they get under contract at a ridiculously low cap rate. So they're hungry to get one of those houses under contract. And it looks good to the hedge fund folks to buy it at auction, in theory. So a lot of times they overpay. In the idea is you're not allowed to go. Most of the time they'll have a scheduled viewing date to go in. I don't like those at all. Like, it's just so icky to be in a house with all these other people that are kind of your competition, and I don't know. I don't like it personally. For sure you can do it.
Is that like auction on the steps, or is that like a HUD Homes type auction?
There's a couple different ways. You can actually buy houses from an auction online where you don't. Yeah, you don't even have to go there. Those are typically really bad houses. I mean, you don't get to go inside of them. I like the on the steps kind of auction because at least you can go in and feel it. So if so let's say we do the auction. I've never done the auction website. The only time I bought it is an auctioneer calls me and tells me. So I talk to them, I say, this is what I'm looking for. If you have something and you want it sold fast with cash, then let me know. So that's what I've bought. It's a lot of work. I'm like, buying from an auction is a lot of work in itself. A lot of people wholesale that way.
The same thing?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
Never looked at them.
For what?
Sheriff auctions, are they the same type of
Yeah.
energy and stuff?
I think they're buying fast boats and cars and shit.
Right. And there's a lot of wholesalers that go in there on speculation of selling it to somebody else. I would rather let the wholesaler go do that, and then they can make their couple $1,000s commission, and now I can actually go in and look at it. Yeah, I don't like too many surprises.
So that is a strategy for some folks to go into auctions. I think they have it every week in Kane County, over at the courthouse in Geneva. And you can get quite good at it. The only caveat is that if you're going to do that, then you need to get a title agent or have a title company run a search
Oh, that's
on the title before you buy it, because what happened, and a lot of the investors that we talked to, they bought a property knowing that there's a first mortgage on it, and whenever you buy the property at an auction, you buy all the liabilities as well. And so what happens sometimes is that they see that the bank is selling it to you, right? The bank is selling it to you, and you buy it at this price, and that bank is fine, but then there's a second mortgage on it that you didn't know was on it. And now you just bought a property that throws your numbers all out of whack because there's a second mortgage on it for like 60 grand that is now yours.
Or a lien.
Or a lien, absolutely.
Or a $27,000 water bill. There was a property that we were going to buy. $27,000. City of Chicago.
That's right.
So they're not going to be fun to work with.
Stay out of Chicago.
Yeah, stay out of
But
Chicago.
it's just, yeah.
Or make that your niche and know everything and every inspector
And if you're not
every government
really
official.
well versed in Chicago, you gotta stay out.
Yeah.
I agree with the criteria for this area, but my son lives in a town of 1,400 people in Nebraska, and he and another guy virtually own every house in the town, because and a lot of it's done on auction. But
Yeah.
in a small town,
It's
you
different,
know
too.
everybody, you know the
Right.
history, what got in, you just have to decide what you're gonna pay for.
And that's right, when you niche down into that demographic that you want, there's people that do all on the North Shore. You know, you can do that, and that's a very, but you know, still look at the numbers, because these numbers are just the numbers. So if you want to specialize in that, for me, that's a little bit more volatile. Like I have friends who invest in California. You can't justify the price when you look at how much it costs to build a house. They can make a ton of money until they're not. You know, I like but the small town area, you can dominate a market like that.
Yeah.
Where literally, and probably a good strategy for him, if it's a small town area, because this is still true in small town areas, is there's local banks.
Right,
So
so
if-
see,
Yeah.
he walks in and tells the banker, I want a loan, and he gives
Yeah.
it there. I mean, that literally, it's a 30-second deal.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that he has an investor friend who's his cash guy.
So
Okay.
And so they went into the local tiny bank,
Yep.
the only bank in the little tiny town.
It's
And
the
they
size
said,
of
they
this
said,
box.
how many houses do you have in foreclosure?
Yeah.
They told him, said, we'll take them all.
Yep, and
That's
that's,
it.
that is a really brilliant strategy. And we have a relationship with our bank here that they tell us, you know, hey, we've got this house as a foreclosure. A lot of the local banks, they don't do so many of those homes anymore, but they still have inventory. You know, they still have people that are foreclosing on properties. So when you go into a bank, you ask to talk to the vice president of commercial banking, you ask them a whole slew of questions so you can know what the health of the bank is. And in the context of, you're building a relationship with the banker. So especially, it's much more valuable in a small town than in a town like ours. So we've got First Community Bank is really the only community bank in this area right here. But if you go further out, even going out to Rockford, having a banking relationship, to me, that is the absolute best way to buy houses. And we don't have the luxury of that here as much as if we were in a small town.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't
It's a
find one.
niche, you know,
Yeah.
they have their niche.
And you can find a small town. So, you know, let's scrap the 20 mile even and go pick a town, Poplar Grove, or even go further out. Go wherever you think, based on your research, that there's value. You come in, you get a relationship with the banker, you pick up some houses, you're improving their little community. You know, you come in as sort of the savior for this little community. You build up the houses, you can draw people. That's a really brilliant marketing strategy. And if somebody does that, I would say stick with that. You know, because it's so easy to get, I'm going to do here, I'm going to do here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. You know, and if you come in with cash, even if it's not your own cash,
They don't care.
you know, they don't care. They don't care. But here's the reality with the bankers. They want to give you money. That's their business. They want to sell you a product, and their product is a loan. So you come in, like our bankers, they bend over backwards. Like we tell them, like, well, we don't need your money for, like, why would I pay you interest if I can just do it? And they're like, well, we understand. We've looked at the Larkin Center. You guys know the Larkin Center?
Oh, yeah.
So I got the realtor is calling me every week. Are you gonna put in an offer? Are you gonna put in an offer? The banker's calling me. Are we gonna finance that for you? Are we gonna finance that for you? You know, it's not in my little niche. I think it'd be super
What
fun
are
and
they
super
asking
cool.
for?
What are they asking for?
$695, maybe more than that. But I think that was the number we were talking about. So I'd buy it for $300.
Yeah, I was gonna say, probably needs a lot of work.
Yeah. So it's the entire block.
I was gonna say, that's a big piece of
Yeah.
property.
It's the
There's
whole.
something
Literally,
behind
it's the
it
whole
too,
block.
right?
That's
something behind
that's
it.
also part of it.
Yeah.
It's a field.
There's the Larkin Center. There's what I
Must be
think
a
would
hospital
be.
or something.
Yeah, there's a hospital, which is just like a little single-family home.
Right.
Yeah.
Then there's a big white building that we would tear down, and then behind it is a 2-story. It's so horrible to go into. It was where they had the boys living. So they have little cement block rooms, very small, like literally like this big.
Like cells.
Yeah. I mean, they're blue and there's writing on the walls, but it's really a sad place.
Get me out of here.
I know.
I hate this place.
But it would be perfect. Downstairs would be perfect for a daycare, and then upstairs would be perfect for storage for the big house. So we mapped it out, and I had architect people come in and everything. So you could turn it into a 16-unit apartment in the front, high-end apartments, like nice apartments. I think it'd be a super fun project, but my husband doesn't blanket. There are certain things like the 10,000 square foot house. I know he's not going to say no to that, but when there's speculation on things, because there's a bit of speculation, and there's asbestos, and there's a lot of, it is the potential to be a huge money pit. So, I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who's new ever, and even somebody who's seasoned who hasn't. It's an extensive rehab, but it would be so cool to do and so fun.
It's close to schools.
Yeah,
Yes, we're almost
Yeah.
kitty corner from one.
yeah, it's a great.
You mentioned
So that's, it's
asbestos.
also an extremely mixed area. right?
Yeah.
It's-
There's
it's-
a-
That's the downside.
You have to look at the
Yeah.
downside being the mixed area, that the revenue for the investment on that and return on it is just
Right.
not there.
Here's-
As I look at it, I don't see it.
Here's where it would be if you made it low income housing, but the city won't let
See,
you.
that's, but then you have